Hey, lifers, Dustin here, and last night the committee released the Week 11 Top 25 poll that will help guide the way towards the college football playoff in 2017. So let's take a look at it. As always, I'm going to put up a graphic showing their top 25, then my top 25, and then at the end I'll show both of those polls with the AP top 25 and kind of compare and contrast the three polls. And then I want to hear your top 25, so definitely make sure to let me know that down below. So delving into the committee's top 25, at number 1 you have Alabama reclaiming their spot back at the top. Clemson was number 2, which I thought was a little surprising. I'm thinking it's because of the Auburn win. The committee doesn't like Miami, who is down at 3. They don't like their schedule, especially on the road. They don't have any big road wins. But Clemson's only road wins or quality road wins, I guess I should say, are against NC State, which is a good win. That's a tough team in a tough environment. And the Wolfpack are ranked at number 19 right now. And then they had Virginia Tech, but Virginia Tech's no longer ranked. They lost to Georgia Tech this week. So I don't know how Oklahoma is sitting there number 4, who won at Ohio State and lost to an Iowa State team who was ranked last week, unlike Syracuse, who beat Clemson. I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I do understand the committee is basically giving Clemson a pass. I feel like they're treating Clemson like an undefeated team because on the road, short week, Kelly Bryant injured, all that, and the loss at Syracuse. So I kind of am starting to realize they're treating Clemson like an undefeated team, and the win against Auburn is such a quality win right now that Auburn beating Georgia probably is why Clemson moved up. So obviously, I disagree a little bit, but you can argue the credentials are there for Clemson to be above Miami and Oklahoma. They do have Oklahoma at 4 and Miami at 3. They view Miami's win against Notre Dame better than Oklahoma's against Ohio State. But considering they do have Notre Dame ranked over Ohio State, I'd see why they may put Miami over Oklahoma. Georgia dropped back 6, Notre Dame dropped back 5, and TCU dropped back 6 after their big losses this weekend, allowing Ohio State and Penn State to slide into the top 10. Could Penn State, with a Big Ten championship, which doesn't look likely at this moment because it doesn't look like they'll win the East, but there is still a shot, with the Big Ten championship, could they maybe slide up into the college football playoff? I don't think so, but maybe I shouldn't rule it out as quickly as I have. At number 11, you have USC, which did not move. They are currently the highest-ranked Pac-12 team, and in my notes off to the side, I wrote a little sad face. Then you have Oklahoma State, Washington State still hanging in there at 14, and then UCF is the highest group of 5 team at 15. They moved up 3 spots. Still not a lot of love from the committee. I understand the schedule isn't the toughest in the world, but if you ask me, if you put them up against Washington State, do I think UCF has a chance to win? Yeah, I do. And depending on which USC team shows up, I think they may have a chance against them. Some of the other top 10 teams outside of maybe Wisconsin, I'm not really sure, but I do think it's a little bit of a disservice to have them as low as they do. Mississippi State at 16 did not move. They stay exactly the same where they were last week in this poll. They are the highest-ranked 3-loss team. All 3 of their losses, all of those teams are currently still in the top 10. So certainly nothing to be ashamed of there. Michigan State, Washington, NC State, and LSU, those last 2 move up 4 spots. Memphis moves up 1, still in contention for a New Year's 6 game, could clinch the American West and have a date with either USF or UCF. If I'm a Tigers fan, I would prefer UCF for the boost in the polls, with Boise State entering the top 25 at number 25, kind of on your heels. Stanford is at 22. They still have a big game against Notre Dame and possibly a Pac-12 championship rematch against USC. Northwestern moves up to 23. And of course, Michigan jumps in there at 24. Dropping out of the top 25 was Iowa, Iowa State, and Virginia Tech. And the way the conferences stack up is the Big Ten leads all the conferences right now with 6 teams in the committee's poll. The SEC has 5, Pac-12 has 4, the ACC and the Big 12 each have 3, the American has 2, and then there's Boise State and Notre Dame. Now, if you look at my top 25 poll, I have Alabama back up at number 1 as well. And then, to be honest with you, as far as resume goes, I kind of think Oklahoma and Miami are tied. I know Miami doesn't like to hear that because they are undefeated, but the win against Ohio State for Oklahoma and then the loss to Iowa State isn't a bad loss at all. But Miami has really only played the last 2 weeks, and their opponents before that aren't the toughest in the world. Miami will still have plenty to prove against Clemson in the ACC championship game, and Oklahoma still has West Virginia and a possible rematch with TCU, but they're kind of tied in my head, and if somebody put Miami 2, Oklahoma 3, I'm not sure I would dispute that too much. I have Wisconsin at 4 and Clemson at 5, each of those two teams moving up 3 spots. I'm giving the undefeated team the nod here, even though if Wisconsin and Clemson play 10 times, I do think Clemson probably wins 8 of those. What's even more impressive is the poll that I did Sunday morning somehow got 6 through 11 exactly the same as the committee. I dropped Georgia back 6, Notre Dame back 5, UCF back 2 just to make room for some of the teams ahead of them. It's nothing to do with UCF. I do think 15 is a little too low for them. And I dropped TCU back 7, back to 13. Mississippi State actually moved up in my poll 4 spots to 15. Again, I do these polls and then I go back and look at where I had them last week to find it. I don't judge it based on where they were last week. Mississippi State moved up 4 spots because of others lost, and they had a tough loss to Alabama at home, a game that theoretically they should have won. They had a chance to win at least. And again, all 3 of their losses are to teams ranked in my poll in the top 7. Just kidding, in both polls in the top 7. I moved Michigan State back 3 to 16. I have Stanford, who jumped up to 17, even though they weren't ranked last week. They did beat Washington, a team that everybody kept telling me was better than I saw. I always kind of had Washington a little lower than a lot of the other teams. I don't know how Stanford jumped up this high. To be completely honest with you, Stanford, Washington, and Washington State are all kind of a tie for me right now. I think it could go any way as far as the Pac-12 North goes, and putting all 3 of them together just seemed to fit. And maybe the order of that doesn't make sense. Maybe Washington State should be ahead. But really, it's kind of they're all ranked 17 in my mind. It's kind of a cop-out answer, but when Stanford is on, Stanford is on. And when they are not, boy, they are not. Look at the Oregon State game for any evidence of that. At number 20, I had Memphis, who dropped back 4 spots. It's exactly the same as UCF. They're just getting lost in the shuffle a little bit, but they do still have the game against probably UCF coming up. I moved NC State up 1, and then West Virginia, Michigan, and Boise State come into my top 25. I did drop Arizona back 1. At number 25, I still think they are a really competitive team and probably one of the top 25 in the country. My next 5 up is LSU, Northwestern, USF, Virginia Tech, and Wyoming, who has some big games in their conference left to go. Dropping out was Iowa, Iowa State, Virginia Tech, and Toledo. The one time I put Toledo as ranked, they lose. Now, if you look at all 3 polls side by side, in green is where me or the AP has a higher than the committee. Black is where they're the exact same. And red, of course, is where I have them a little bit lower. The AP has them a little bit lower. You can see, really, the top 11 is kind of the same. I have Clemson down at 5. Obviously, the committee has them at 2. AP poll has them at 4. The AP poll gave Miami 4 first-place votes. Alabama, 57, so pretty dominant lead for the Tide right now. But Oklahoma there at 3, Wisconsin at 5. So with the exception of the AP poll having Penn State at 13 and Oklahoma State at 10, we all have the same top 10. So we all have the same top 9, it looks like. So it's just kind of a matter of shuffling at this point. TCU and USC are kind of the same in all of our eyes. They have Penn State further down. I have UCF higher up. I have Stanford much higher up. The AP poll and the College Football Committee still have LSU ranked. They're right on the bubble for me. I know they have that win against Auburn, which is an incredibly good win right now. Just something is just 1 degree off from LSU right now. Just can't quite pull the trigger on putting them in over a team like West Virginia or NC State. And the AP poll has USF and West Virginia ranked, while I have West Virginia and Arizona ranked, and the committee has LSU and Northwestern ranked, which I do not. So there you have it, the Week 11 Top 25 polls. You can kind of see where some things are getting shuffled in that like 10 to 15 range. So those are the teams that have the most outside chance of trying to get into the playoff. Very unlikely at this stage in the season, but if a lot of chaos happens, which there's still plenty of time for, they can still maneuver their way up. But now it's your turn. Let me know down in the comment section what your top 25 looks like. And I did a video right here this weekend on Sunday about the playoff update. So you can check that out if you were curious about kind of projecting forward a little bit. But down below, don't tell me your favorites at the end of the year. Just tell me where you have them ranked right now. That's the difference between this video and the video on Sunday. Thank you all very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can also click the circle right there in order to subscribe or watch any of the other videos over there to the right that YouTube has suggested for you. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, until next time. Hey Lifers, Dustin here, and last night the committee released the Week 11 Top 25 poll that will help guide the way towards the college football playoff in 2017. So let's take a look at it. As always, I'm going to put up a graphic showing Alabama reclaiming their spot back at the top. Clemson was number 2, which I thought was a little surprising. I'm thinking it's because of the Auburn win. The committee doesn't like Miami, who is down at 3. They don't like their schedule, especially on the road. They don't have any big road. Virginia Tech's no longer ranked. They lost to Georgia Tech this week. So I don't know how Oklahoma is sitting there number 4, who won at Ohio State and lost to an Iowa State team who was ranked last week, unlike Syracuse, who beat Clemson. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I do understand the committee is based on their top 25, then my top 25, and then at the end I'll show both of those polls with the AP top 25 and kind of compare and contrast the 3 polls. And then I want to hear your top 25, so definitely make sure to let me know that down below. So delving into the committee's top 25, at number 1 you have wins. But Clemson's only road wins or quality road wins, I guess I should say, are against NC State, which is a good win. That's a tough team in a tough environment. And the Wolfpack are ranked at number 19 right now. And then they had Virginia Tech, but